Well. Clemson Tiger fans, college football fans, welcome back to another episode of the All In Show here on the Voice of College Football Clemson channel. I am your host, Tiger Paul Craven. Thank you for joining me for another episode, guys. We got a good show for you tonight, guys. We're going to get into the Clemson schedule release. The ACC schedule release overall, basically. We'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk a little bit about Garrett Riley's introduction press conference. Press conference today, yesterday. I can't talk tonight. I'll get it together eventually. But his press conference, some things Dabo said, some things he said, and just the overall excitement about him joining the Clemson program. We'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk a little bit about some recruits that have committed recently, some recruiting updates, and then maybe we'll get to some basketball at the end. And then, as always, we will end the show in the comment section talking about whatever you guys want to talk about. But before we get into the show tonight, I'm going to give my buddy Jordan Bowman a couple minutes here to try to get back on. He's having some technical difficulties. That's why the show was a little bit delayed tonight. But we'll see if he can pop back on here within the next couple minutes before we get started. Okay, so I'll be here interacting with the comments section while we wait on my buddy Jordan Bowman to arrive. But in the meantime, shout out to the comments section, guys. You make this show what it is. Both myself and Jordan really do appreciate you guys. If you're in the live chat right now, see, there's about 9 of you in there. If you could, go ahead and hit that like button for us. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. We are here every single week to do a live show for you guys every Thursday at 7 p.m. That's myself and Jordan Bowman are here every Thursday at 7 p.m. to do a live show for you guys. And then there's always content throughout the week on the channel by various contributors. Also, if you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We are on the road to 5,000 subscribers, guys. We hit 4K back in December, and we are constantly growing since, which is a super good thing. We like to see it, and that's our goal. That's what we're trying to do. And if you want to support the channel in any other fashion, we have the Super Chat feature as always, and links in the description of this video of how you can support the Mark Rogers channel. And all of that stuff. So with all of that out of the way, shout out to the comments section. Edward's in here first. Thanks for getting in. He says, yo, go Tigers. Hey, what's up, man? Thanks for stopping by. Ben Adams. John Sarian gets in. Thanks for stopping by, man. You guys are always here. Philip Brister. Good luck at Cornhole tonight, buddy. Good luck. I hope you win. I hope you take everyone's money at Cornhole tonight. That would be awesome. Big Mix in the house tonight. Thanks for stopping by. Let's see. Anybody else in here yet? That seems to be about it. Let's see. John Sarian gets in. He says, dang, if Dabo didn't pull out his flamethrower aimed at fans in his presser, I get how he takes criticism of his boys personally, but man, that was brutal. Oh, okay. Hold on one second. Jordan Bowman, what's up, brother? Thanks for joining us.
What's up? Yeah. Internet issues again. You got to love them. Literally as soon as we were about to join the show, because I was there. You saw me.
I saw you. We were talking backstage before the show. I put on kind of the intro and we were waiting for some people to come in, and all of a sudden I saw you were gone, and I was like, oh no, what happened to Jordan? Somebody kidnapped him.
Well, I'm here now. I don't know what you've talked. I haven't been able to listen, so I don't know what you've discussed yet.
We haven't got into it. I was kind of just doing my little intro thing, yelling at people to like and subscribe. My whole rigmarole that I go through, and then just interacting with the chat. Shout out to the chat section, everybody in here. And then I just got to this one. The first comment that I actually brought up on screen was John Sarian talking a little bit about something we'll get into during the show tonight, which is Dabo's press conference and Garrett Riley's introductory press conference, and how he kind of went a little scorched earth, I guess, on some Clemson fans and some what he perceives as people being spoiled in the fan base. So,
yeah, I've got some opinions on that.
yeah. Hold the phone on that one, John, and everybody else responding to him in the comments. We will get to our thoughts a little bit later in the show on that. But before we get into that, we obviously wanted to go through the schedule release. We kind of teased it on last week's show about how Clemson was going to release their schedule, or the ACC would release the schedule on the 30th, which they did. And I think Clemson's schedule looks pretty good. We got a couple different three home game stretches in the schedule. I think our bye week falls pretty well. Kind of literally smack dab in the middle of the season. So some interesting things going on with Clemson's schedule. What jumped off the page for you at first glance when you saw Clemson's schedule?
Well, you're gonna have to forgive me because I'm doing this off of memory right now. Because I would have it in front of me, but
Gotcha.
Obviously I cannot access the internet outside of my phone right now. But honestly, the first thing that jumped off the page to me was one. I think Clemson September is really, really easy, for obvious reasons, and I think it sets up pretty well, especially considering what this team is going through offensively. A scheme change, officially a new starting quarterback. You open with Duke. Duke is an improving program, and they had a really nice season in year one under Mike Elko. But I think, all in all, the September schedule is sets up pretty well. Obviously, you have that Florida State game in week 4, but you get 3 games you should be, double digit, like 3-score favorites in. Duke, Charleston Southern, and Florida Atlantic.
Yep.
So, I think it gives you a chance. It gives you 3 games to get acclimated, to kind of figure yourself out a little bit and kind of get used to the flow of things. Obviously, you're not going to learn everything you need to know about this team against those 3 opponents, but it's going to be huge for, Cade getting rolling and his confidence early on, and him and Garrett Riley kind of feeling each other out, and just this entire offense kind of meshing a little bit and understanding what's expected of them. So that was one of the first things that jumped off the page. And then, later in the schedule, I think the road trip to NC State right before you play Notre Dame is pretty tricky. So I'm really interested to see how they navigate it. This past season, Clemson had a bye week before Notre Dame, didn't end up mattering. But this year, you don't get that luxury. It is at home, but going at NC State is no easy feat, and they are going through an offensive change themselves. They bringing in Robert Anae, bringing in Brendan Armstrong from the transfer portal, could be a really, really interesting fit there. So, I think the schedule for Clemson kind of, it sets up pretty well, but there are some landmines in there. There's more I'm probably missing, but those are the 2 that came to my head immediately.
Yeah, absolutely. There's certainly some landmines in the schedule for sure, and we'll get to a full breakdown where we go game by game here. But obviously, the first big test of the season is going to be Florida State, and that happens late September or mid to late September, which is an interesting placement for that game. I think the ACC, looking at the 2 possible teams that could end up in the ACC championship game, at least if you're looking at it preseason on paper right now, a good guess would be Clemson and Florida State, right? So it's interesting that they placed that game in September. Kind of looks like they're trying to leverage that into, a possible rematch, and then a possible allowing the team that loses to have an opportunity to really right that wrong and get on a roll and then possibly challenge later on in the ACC championship game, which I thought was an interesting thing that the ACC did. I don't disagree with it. I understand why they did it. And we'll see how that all shakes out. It'll be interesting, but to me, it appears like the ACC is expecting that to possibly be a rematch, which is why it's in September. And then we go on a pretty rough stretch late in the season with a lot of games in a row that we'll talk about more in depth. But I mean, you're talking, NC State, Notre Dame, North Carolina, and South Carolina, with kind of Georgia Tech in the middle of that run. But that's pretty rough, man. That's, even if you're good and you're playing well, that's a tough stretch of games to kind of end the season with and really, really be tested. The month of November for Clemson is not going to be kind as far as it ain't going to be easy, right? It's going to be a true, as Dabo likes to call it, championship phase, right? They're going to have to earn their stripes in the month of November this coming season. So it'll be interesting. It's a good schedule. But let's get into it. Let's break it down game by game. So we start off with Duke on September 4th. Duke, obviously, kind of a good story, a feel-good story from the ACC. Mike Elko last season. They kind of came out of nowhere, right? Nobody expected them. I mean, I know I didn't. I didn't expect Duke to do what they did. I don't think anybody really expected Duke to play the way that they did. They ended the season 9-4, second in the Coastal. No one saw that coming. I don't know what their preseason, I guess, projection was in the ACC, but I guarantee you it wasn't second in the Coastal with a brand new head coach. I can guarantee you it wasn't that. I don't know what it was, but it was not that. So Duke definitely overachieved. Can they parlay that into another good season, another solid season where they are outperforming the talent they have on the field? That is yet to be seen, but they are coming off of a really successful season for Duke standards, by far, a lot. And normally, in the past, when Clemson has traveled into Duke, Clemson has traveled very well because, let's face it, Duke has not traditionally been very good at football, right? So Clemson fans kind of pack the house. Duke fans are kind of, not really interested in football too terribly much. And that tide seems to be shifting. At least it was last season. So how do you think that carries over into game one this year with the excitement of the Duke fans and just this overall matchup as best we can do it before spring ball even happens?
Yeah, I mean, this is a really interesting matchup for a lot of reasons. Like you said, Duke is really kind of been an upstart program. This last year, in year one under Mike Elko, 9-4, really dominant bowl win over UCF. They looked really impressive. They're returning their quarterback Riley Leonard, who was one of the better quarterbacks in the ACC last year. Huge part of their offense, has a really nice arm, but he's a threat with his legs as well. And so, that's going to provide some matchup issues for Clemson and something they're going to have to game plan for. So I think it's a good start to the season as far as a conference opponent. And they've got, Duke has some they have some real coaching. I saw that Mike Elko brought in I'm blanking. I believe it's Santucci or whatever. I can't. I think that's his
however
last
you
name.
say his name.
From Texas A&M to be the defensive coordinator. And I think that's a really nice hire for them. Elko obviously has his connections to A&M from being their defensive coordinator, and so Duke is really starting to invest in their football program a lot. I'm really interested to see what the Duke fan turnout is, because traditionally they're not a fan base that really feels
Right.
Wallace Wade. But there seems to be at least some renewed interest. But I think Clemson is certainly going to travel well. But maybe there's more Duke fan. I think there'll be more Duke fans than there were the last time Clemson went down to Duke. What was that? 2013.
Yes, long time ago. But
Yeah,
the stadium was basically orange then. So
yeah.
But yeah, that's what I thought was kind of interesting. I think there is some semblance of a renewed commitment from the fan base, and obviously the university. I mean, you said it. They're bringing in coaches. They seem to be taking football a lot more serious. They seem to be invested in it. So you would think that would transfer to the fan base. So it'd be interesting. It'd be interesting to see. But as we know, Clemson always travels well, and I expect nothing less for that game. Edward gets in and said Duke gave us some bulletin board material to work with. Yeah, they did. It's pretty funny. That. Did you see that video? Of them
it was good.
Rubbing the concrete Duke symbol or whatever and running down the hill, kind of trolling Dabo's run a little bit there. I thought it was pretty funny. I thought it was a well-made video, man.
Hey, Clemson fans were riled up too. So I mean, they did his job. It was funny. Yeah. I didn't care. I thought it was a good little, good little gag. But
yeah, I thought it was a great troll. I thought it was a good job by their social media department. I mean, why not, right? But it did get a rise out of the Clemson fan base, which I think was the intent. So that was a success for Duke. I don't think they will be nearly as successful on the field, but it was a good job by the Duke social media staff there. All right, let's move on a little bit. We got two games. We'll kind of talk about these in conjunction because these are kind of our two. I guess what do we refer to them as college football? Cupcake games of the season, right? We get them back to back early on in the season. So we start off with the conference game, which I like to start off with the conference game, kind of a little measuring stick, kind of get the guys locked in, and then we go. And we play Charleston Southern and Florida Atlantic, both back-to-back home games, obviously, back-to-back home games. There's obviously not a whole lot on the field here to talk about. These guys are going to be, completely outmatched on the field as far as athletically, size, speed. It's kind of two tune-up games for Clemson, if you will. But again, Clemson doesn't have a history of losing these type of games, but these type of teams live for slaying these big dogs. So you can't walk in and kind of sleepwalk through the games. But I don't think there's a whole lot there in those two games to really ever be worried about.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is just these are two tune-up games. You're not really going to learn a whole lot about your team. But it is a chance for a lot of guys to get extra. What I don't want to see in this game is similar to what happened this past season, like the Louisiana Tech game and the Furman game, where it was. I mean, the game was never in doubt, but Clemson never was in a comfortable enough position to really put in a ton of their depth players. I really want to see that change this season. I want Clemson to build a lead. I want them to get the opportunity to rotate in as many players as possible, build that depth, get guys experience. We have a lot of youth at a lot of positions, so that's I think that's going to be huge for their development. And so that's kind of what you're looking for, especially with this with this new offense. That shouldn't be a problem, but who knows? I think we as a fan base have been scarred by the last two seasons.
Right.
So it would be comforting to see Clemson build a huge lead in both of these games and do what they used to do and get a lot of guys playing time. So
absolutely. And it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I would say that's something that we have not seen Clemson have the ability to do in a game in a really long time. You know what I'm saying? At least it feels that way. 21 and 22, although we were improved in 22. I mean, you mentioned the La Tech game. That game was never really comfortable, right, from a fan base. I remember us doing that post-game reaction, that live post-game reaction. That's still our most watched live post-game reaction, by the way, Jordan.
Which is really weird.
At like almost 8,000 views or something like that, which is the craziest thing I've ever heard of. Never would have thought it would have been La Tech would be our most popular post-game reaction. But it ended up being, and like you said, we need those two tune-up games. We need to build that depth, that defensive line rotation, right? Because that's super important going into the bulk of our schedule. That's really the rest of our schedule. It's really kind of backloaded in that way. And we have to figure out what that defensive rotation is going to look like along the defensive line. We've talked endlessly recently about the guys that did come back on the defensive line. And although that is great and we should celebrate that and we should be really excited about our defensive line going forward, we have talked about our depth issues that we have, especially along the edge, right? So figuring out that rotation, I think those two games help us with that. That helps us with our rotation at linebacker, although we do have two guys coming back. We are replacing a huge piece in Trotter, right? So, or excuse me, Trenton Simpson. Simpson, not Trotter. But we're replacing a huge piece in Trenton Simpson, and we need to figure out that back end, right? We need to figure out who put in the work over the summer, who's going to be the guy that steps up and really insert themselves in the back end of that defense. So we got a lot of work to do there. And then also at receiver, those two games are going to be crucial. We need to see those dudes get out there, fight for balls, fight through contact, go up in high point balls, and really catch balls that are in vicinity of them, right? The ball can't always be perfectly placed. They have to go get it. So that's a lot of what I'd like to see. And then, of course, the offensive line rotation as well, kind of building that depth, right? We feel, I feel like we're going to have 5 solid guys that are going to start next season if it all works out the way that, we kind of talked about on our last episode. But building that depth, building that 6th, 7th, 8th guy that can be in the rotation when inevitably someone gets banged up or hurt or, whatever the case may be, just the grind of a season. So I think those two games are super important. And that leads us into our biggest test of the year so far. So at this point, I would assume we should be 3-0 heading into a massive collision with Florida State. Florida State comes to Death Valley. There's going to be probably a ton of hype around this game as far as an early season big matchup in college football. Who knows what they'll be ranked going in. But I could see this being an early season top 10 matchup, right? In Death Valley, two of the, kind of the flag bearers for the ACC or have been the flag bearers for the ACC in the past. This takes me back to some big Clemson, Florida State games, or at least it could set up to be one of those. And that's going to be a test. They have Jordan Travis coming back. They have a lot of talent coming back. They were a good team. They got hot towards the end of the season. We all know about the rough patch that they had against NC State, Clemson, and Wake Forest. But outside of that, they had a pretty solid season, and they ended very well. They beat an Oklahoma team. They feel really good about themselves. Their fan base is flying high. And, as their fan base has made it clear, they are looking to slay the kings of the ACC. And right now, that is the Clemson Tigers. So it's going to be an interesting matchup coming into Florida State.
Yeah, it's huge. This is the most important game on the schedule for me. Yep. I think this is the game that everybody is circled. I think you need to win this game from a perception standpoint. I know a loss in this game, especially with how it's been positioned, isn't a killer to your college football playoff chances. But I think Clemson really needs to win this game. I mean, it's at home. And I think just from a perception standpoint, it's been perceived that even though Clemson won the league last year, that they're kind of slipping. And Florida State's the team on the rise. They finished ranked higher than Clemson in the final AP poll. So yep. There's just there's going to be a lot of media members picking Florida State to win the conference this year. So I think winning this game is going to be huge. It's going to be a tough matchup. Jordan Travis obviously coming back. They have a stable of running backs that are really, really good. They're improving on the offensive line. They have a lot of talent up front on the defensive line. They kind of need to figure out linebacker and defensive back, but they've done a lot in the transfer portal. Made a lot of additions there. Some names that we're as Clemson fans are familiar with, like Jaheim Bell. So this Florida State team has a lot of weapons on the offensive side of the ball, and if they improve that defense, they're definitely going to be a top 10 type team. So winning that game would be huge. It would be a good resume builder for Clemson, and hopefully with this being so early in the schedule, you have some of your whatever growing pains you have to go through offensively with this new scheme. Hopefully, you kind of iron those out because it's you got to be able to come to play because Florida State's they're gonna score some points. I think Mike Norvell knows how to dial up an offense, and they've improved the talent on that roster year by year. So it's going to be a tough out. Excited for that game. Probably the biggest matchup in Death Valley. That's in probably what 6 or 7 years, probably. I mean, at least since that Louisville game back in 2016. So huge game. The game you want to win. You need to win probably, especially since it will give you some cushion to if you need it, if you take a loss later in the year in conference play, because you want. I mean, ultimately you want to get to Charlotte and let the chips fall where they may from there. So
absolutely
huge game. Yeah,
the whole idea is definitely to get to Charlotte, and you win this game, and it does buy you that a little bit of security. But you lose that game, then it's you got to win them all from there. So zero room for error if you drop that game. Plus, it's in Death Valley. And the Noel fans are talking too much, man. They're talking too much. They're getting too big. They need to be reminded of who Clemson is. So I look forward to this game. I can't wait. It's going to be amazing. And this is to be honest, this is a Florida State team that got better in the offseason, right? They added some big pieces through the transfer portal, or at least it appears that they got better. We'll see how all the pieces fit. Not every piece you bring in always works out, but if you look at from the outside looking in, it looks like they got better. So interesting times. I understand why there's a lot of hype around Florida State, but until they dethrone Clemson, they are still not running this conference quite yet, although they like to think they are. But that's going to be a huge game in Death Valley. I'm sure the tickets for that game will be way too rich for my blood. I will not be there. But I'm sure it'll be a crazy atmosphere. Then we roll and we play Syracuse. So this is going to be on the road up at Syracuse. We get to travel to New York again. A team that started off last year 6-0. No one saw coming, right? And then the backload of their schedule caught up to them, and they completely fell apart towards the end of the season, and barely ended up bowl eligible. If it wasn't for that amazing run in the beginning of the season, they would not have been bowl eligible. So this is a team that I don't really know what to make of Syracuse. They're kind of just forever a mediocre team in the ACC, but they do tend to cause Clemson some issues, for whatever reason. Even this past season, they caused Clemson some issues. They tend to be that team that always somehow makes it a game with Clemson, regardless of the talent gap, regardless of where people think the game, should go. They tend to always give us a really good showing. Dino Babers, always has them ready for that game, and we need to be ready when we roll into Syracuse, New York next season. I've been to that stadium. It is small, but it does get super loud, and it's an indoor stadium. For whatever reason, they don't have AC. I don't understand it because it gets like 9 million degrees in there, and you feel like you're having a heat stroke. But I don't think anything to worry about in Syracuse, New York next year. This team is just not they should not be able to compete with Clemson next year.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it seems like we say that every year, but no,
I know we do.
I think this feels a little different. In Syracuse, this has kind of gone under the radar, but this offseason, but Syracuse really got gutted by the transfer portal and graduation this year. A lot of key guys that they were relying on this season have left. They also lose their offensive coordinator, Robert Anae, who was responsible for them and Garrett Schrader's offensive success this year. It's not looking good. Yeah, Syracuse, they're not returning a whole lot. They have some staff turnover. This might be the end. I know we've kind of been it's kind of just been teased, and you're just wondering when it's going to happen. But this season might be the last for Dino Babers. I don't know. I don't think this roster is looking very good. They haven't made a ton of impactful moves in the transfer portal, and they've lost a ton. Garrett Williams has gone to the draft. Jahad Carter, transferred out. Sean Tucker, their bell cow running back. I'm glad he's gone.
Thank God for his sake. Yeah. He needs to get up out of there.
Yeah. Plus, he's too talented anyway. Deuce Chestnut is gone, transferred out. Just a lot of key pieces. They lost some pieces on the defensive line. They are losing a ton. So this should be a weakened Syracuse team. I don't expect much out of them next season. I'd be surprised if they were if they were that competitive in this game. So I think this is a game that Clemson you need to win and not succumb to some of the issues you've had in the dome in recent years. So got to take care of business here.
It's been some nail biters the past couple seasons. We've pulled them out, but it's been some serious nail biters. I think Dino Babers' time is limited in Syracuse. I like Dino Babers. Seems like a good enough guy, but eventually Syracuse is going to have to go in a different direction, and they might be the worst ACC team coming up this season. They might be fighting for that spot with a couple others, but they're not going to be very good. I don't think so. And we're followed up by Wake Forest. Guess who doesn't play for Wake Forest anymore, Jordan?
I don't know who. Well, one A.T. Perry, but
A.T. Perry doesn't play. Thank God he doesn't play for Wake Forest.
That's who I'm more happy to see going. But yeah, Sam Hartman.
Sam Hartman does not play for Wake Forest anymore, but somehow we're still going to end up playing him. We'll get to that on a later game in the schedule. We will still play Sam Hartman for like the 9th season in a row. But we play Wake Forest. I feel like they lost a lot on offense, right? They're not going to quite be the same team that they were last season. Obviously lost their longtime quarterback. That's going to be a huge hole to fill, although it looks like their backup up there may be up for the challenge. We will see. But they obviously lost A.T. Perry, a huge guy in the receiving corps. But they tend to be a factory when it comes to passing game up there. So I have no doubt that they will retool. But again, I think there will be some decline coming next season for Wake Forest.
Yeah. Wake Forest is going to be a really interesting team this year because, like you said, they do lose. They do lose some key pieces. They lost a lot on their offensive line. Obviously, along with losing Sam Hartman, and you lose A.T. Perry to the draft. But they do have a lot of confidence in that backup, Mitch Griffiths. They seem to like him a lot, and from listening to people who are more connected than I am, that it seems to me that the Wake Forest staff kind of wanted to move on from Sam Hartman earlier in the year. And so they weren't exactly broken up to see him gone. Obviously, they love that. They love him, and he's the ACC's all-time passing touchdown leader. He has all that. He's one of the best quarterbacks in school history. But I think they really do like the backup, and we're ready to make that transition. So it'll be interesting to see. They always have a stable of wide receivers for their quarterbacks to throw to. They lose A.T. Perry, but they bring back pretty much everybody else. Donovan Green, Taylor Moran, Jamal Banks, who had a huge game against Clemson this year. Keyshawn Williams. They have some dudes at receiver. Their wide receiver coach did just step down into an off the field role, so I don't know how much that'll affect them as well. But this is a team I don't think you can take lightly. I think Clemson, you're going to have to prepare for them because I think this offense is going to be a little bit different. Warren Ruggiero, their offensive coordinator, seems to do a good job of changing the offense to kind of fit the skill set of his quarterbacks. I mean, the offense they ran when Sam Hartman was the quarterback wasn't necessarily the same that they ran when Jamie Newman was the quarterback, or when even going back to like John Wolford. So this will be an interesting team to scout. And I think this is a team that Clemson can't take lightly, coming off that Syracuse game. So you've got to be on your A game, even though you get them at home this year.
Absolutely. And they always seem to have, a team that can go out there and compete, right? So expect nothing different out of Wake Forest this coming season. But they do have quite a bit to replace. They got quite a bit of retooling to do. And it was interesting that they didn't seem too broken up about Sam Hartman. It was kind of announced by their coach, like, yeah, he'll probably get an NIL deal and go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay. That's all right. That's weird,
Yeah.
but okay. Like it was just odd to me to hear a head coach say that about a guy that's been there so long and holds, all these big records. But maybe you're right. Maybe the coaching staff was ready to move on from Sam Hartman, and maybe he was ready to move on from Wake Forest, and maybe it was a mutual kind of, we did our thing together, and it's time to go in separate directions. So we'll see. That'll lead us into let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that'll lead us into our bye week, right? After Wake Forest. So we'll go into our bye week. We'll come out of our bye week and we will play Miami. We'll play Miami. Miami had a really disappointing season this past season. I'm just speaking from the perspective of a lot of their fans, right? I think they kind of expected Mario to come in and really show an impact in season one. And I don't think it turned out exactly how they wanted it to. Felt like there was some turmoil as far as coaching staff and players, and maybe some buy-in issues with, kind of how Mario Cristobal wants to do things. I have heard, that he's kind of old school and, he kind of does things and goes about things a different way than probably they were used to from the previous regime. So maybe some of those dudes weren't ready to buy into that kind of system. So they lost a lot through the transfer portal. They also brought in some transfers. But we all know what Mario Cristobal does on the recruiting trail. He's been continuing to do it since he's been at Miami. Nobody's ever doubted the way that the guy can recruit. So Miami will be a talented team. But the question will be, can they put it all together? I know there's a sect of Miami fans out there that want to see them go a different direction in the offensive side of the ball as far as their coordinator. So a lot of differing opinions in the Miami fan base, but that's par for the course for Miami, right? But I do think they have the right guy for the job. I think he'll do well. It'll just be putting all those pieces together. He can recruit with the best of them. Mario Cristobal is an amazing recruiter. So Miami will never be short of talent while he is the head coach. But he's got to bring in players that buy into his system and his way of doing things. And I'm assuming that's why there was so much turnover on the roster this past season.
Yeah. This is a Miami team, like you said, loaded with talent. Had a disappointing year. Mario did, recently fired Josh Gaddis. So, they're looking for a new offensive coordinator.
Oh, I didn't see that. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So it'll be a new look Miami team. They've had a lot of guys leave. And, they brought in some guys. I think there's going to be a lot of, key players from this incoming freshman class that are going to have to step in and play early. So they'll be a really young team as well. This is going to be a really interesting team. I tend to agree that Mario is the right fit for this job. I do think Miami eventually, at some point, they will be a competitive program. I think the real question is the ceiling that this team can reach. If you go back to Mario's tenure at Oregon, they were never a bad team. They were always winning 9, 10 plus games, but
they could never turn the corner.
Yeah, they were really good on the lines of scrimmage, but they were somewhat limited on the offensive side of the ball. Never really got the quarterback play, even with Justin Herbert, that they needed to really get over the top. With this new offensive coordinator change, will Mario kind of take his hands off the offense? Because that's kind of been a reported issue with a lot of people that have worked with him on the offensive side of the ball. Is he has a way he wants to do things, and it's not always the most quarterback friendly. So, his decision at offensive coordinator is going to be pivotal for how Miami performs this year because, they have some bright, pieces individually, but as a whole, there doesn't seem to be that buy-in yet. So getting a guy that can really breathe some life into the offensive side of the ball is going to be big. So this is another team that you're not really going to know much about coming into the year. Getting them later, you'll have some film on them. They'll kind of have more of an identity. But it'll be interesting to see what Miami looks like in year 2.
Yeah, we'll see where Mario goes with the OC. There's a couple teams out there searching for some OCs. So the coaching carousel in college football continues. The ever turning carousel of coaching in college football. David Wood says Miami fans had them playing for a natty last year. Well, Miami's playing for a natty every offseason, so that's nothing.
Offseason national champs, yeah.
Yeah, they are the greatest.
Offseason recruiting and national champs.
Yeah, but it's interesting, that you go back to Oregon and kind of how his offenses always tend to underperform. They could never just, like I said, put it all together. As a team, Oregon was always really good, but never put it all together. Never got over the hump, and they obviously had a really good quarterback because he's doing pretty well in the NFL. So,
yes, he is.
You can't really blame quarterback play there. But again, we'll see how it goes. Miami will never be lacking talent, but we'll see if they can put it together. NC State. This is a team last season that had a lot of hype coming in. Some playoff talks of, winning the ACC for sure, possibly getting into the playoffs, possibly making a serious run. Quarterback gets hurt, Devin Leary, he leaves. They have some turnover, not the season at all that NC State fans thought it was going to be. Kind of disappointing in that fact. They kind of fell apart a little bit, although they did deal with quite a bit of injuries. But that tends to happen in college football. But where do you kind of see them going this coming season?
Yeah, another team you don't really know a lot about. You see, there's kind of a trend here. A lot of these teams on the Clemson schedule have a lot of turnover and a lot of new faces. And NC State is no different. New quarterback, new offensive quarterback.
You remember how last year? Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but you remember? I just think it's funny. It popped in my head. Remember how last year how we all had all these great quarterbacks that we were talking about preseason in the ACC, and now they're all transferring. They all transferred from their original teams.
Yeah, pretty much. It's pretty crazy. So Devin Leary's gone out the door. He's at Missouri now. Incoming Brendan Armstrong, Robert and I from Syracuse, previously at Virginia. So reuniting with his old quarterback.
Reunion there.
They're trying to get a new identity on offense because that was the area they really struggled with. So it'll be really interesting to see how that kind of meshes in year 1. I think this is Brendan Armstrong's. I think he actually has 2 years of eligibility left, which is kind of hard to believe. But so I think if he plays this year, he could play again if he wanted to. But either way, it's feels like Brendan Armstrong's been around forever.
Yeah.
But
terrible season last year, man. You talk about a night and day from the previous season to last year for Brendan Armstrong. What a
Yeah,
tough way. So I don't blame him going to reunite with the offensive coordinator that he had such a good season with. So makes sense from his perspective, I think.
absolutely. So this is a team that has a lot of questions to answer. They not only did they struggle with, as far as their quarterback play was concerned, they didn't really have much of a running game. Wide receiver room was really underwhelming for a lot of the year. So I'm interested to see. Robert and he has a history of getting the most out of the guys and kind of tailoring his offense to his personnel. So we'll see how much more production he can get out of those guys in the room. They've added some transfers. Even Dakari Collins from Clemson included. It'll be interesting. And on the defensive side of the ball, they have some big losses. They were a really experienced defense last year, kept them in a lot of games. Flat out won them a lot of their games.
Yeah, it was kind of a 2021 Clemson team, right? Where it was just
kind of a mini version of that.
Defense just was doing all they could to keep them in games. Yeah.
But yeah, they're losing that incredible linebacker core. Peyton Wilson, Isaiah Moore, Drake Thomas. Those guys are going off to the NFL. So they've got some pieces to replace there. So NC State, there'll be a new look team. There will be a lot of new faces. Interested to see what they look like.
Yeah, lots of question marks for quite a few teams in the ACC this year, and NC State no short of that.
You're right.
All right.
I said Devin Leary was at Missouri, didn't I?
Kentucky. He's at Kentucky. Yeah.
He was linked to Missouri. He was linked to Missouri at one point, and that was the first school that came to my head. But yes, he's at Kentucky. That's my fault.
Kentucky, absolutely. So
thanks, Edward.
Yeah, shout out to the comment section for keeping us in line there. We appreciate it. Let's see. All right, moving right along in Clemson's schedule. Next up, we have a rough game to talk about here. Notre Dame. Hopefully, goes a lot better than it did last season. That may have been one of the toughest games to watch Clemson play last season, outside of the South Carolina game. It'll be a number 2 for me, with just a tough game to watch Clemson go through, just because of how we lost. We got absolutely manhandled in that game. We got embarrassed. We didn't look like we belonged on the field with a Notre Dame team, which is
a Notre Dame team that lost to Stanford and Marshall.
Yes. A Notre Dame team, yes, that was not exactly highly thought of coming into that game, right? They had their struggles and started to turn it around a little bit, and they absolutely took it to Clemson. We did not look like we belonged on the field, and that's not something you've been able to say of a Clemson team really ever, or at least in a very long time, right? So Notre Dame really manhandled Clemson. It was a tough game. That was the game where Cade came in on the goal line, backed up against his own goal line, threw a pick, and they immediately pulled him right back out.
Yeah.
That was the game that we kind of thought there may be a switch at quarterback. I don't think he was given a fair shot in that game because DJ came out the very next series and threw a pick, and he stayed in the game and finished the game. And it was just a miserable game. But Notre Dame has to come to Clemson this season. We look to be even more improved on the offensive side of the ball, led by Garrett Riley. And we get to see a familiar face. Our defense gets to see a familiar face. Redemption game for Nate Wiggins against Sam Hartman. We can't get away from this guy, man. He's like, he's like roaches, man. He just keeps coming back. No offense, Sam Hartman. Yeah. I'm not saying you're a roach, but it's the first thing that came to my mind, I guess. But he won't go away. We've played him for like 27 years in a row. This will be 28. But the good news is he's never beat Clemson.
Nope.
So here's to go in 0-28, Sam Hartman. Way to go.
Yeah, if he loses this game, he'll be the first quarterback to ever go 0-5 against Clemson. So that would be that'd be really fun. But no,
he does already own a lot of records, so he might as well get another one.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. It'll be a little. It'd be really. I mean, he broke Taj Boyd's passing touchdown record. So
there you go. Yeah, it'll only be right. We gotta avenge Taj Boyd's record there. We gotta get a little payback.
This is a big game. This is an opportunity to get payback. You're in the confines of your own home stadium. You should be improved on offense. Hopefully, special teams isn't as horrendous as it was in that game. But this is another chance to get a huge resume builder. I mean, Notre Dame, they look to be improved offensively with Sam Hartman at quarterback. They're hoping to get some added production from their receivers. They're going to have a really good offensive line yet again. Their offensive coordinator is currently interviewing for the Alabama job, so we'll see how that. Or he interviewed today, so we'll see what comes out of that. Tommy Rees. So who knows? Maybe Notre Dame has a new offense next season. We'll see how that shakes out. But just this is a really intriguing game. I think Notre Dame is going to be better than they were, last year, and at least offensively in most respects. So I think you really have to be able to bring it on, yourself on offense, because if you allow yourself to get dominated up front like you did, this past season, it's going to be another long game. So Notre Dame, they're going to be really experienced in the secondary, and they might have one of the better cornerback trios in the country. So being able to establish the run, being balanced on offense, and all of that is going to be key. But yeah, another big, tough matchup for Clemson, especially coming off of that road trip to Raleigh. So and you don't get the bye week this time, so you got to come prepared.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the second half of our schedule, right? So we get a bye week after Wake, and then we have a tough 6-game stretch, right? We already talked about Miami and NC State. Now we got the Notre Dame game, and then we finish up with Georgia Tech, North Carolina, and South Carolina. So a tough second half of the season for Clemson. Maybe none of those games will prove to be as tough as maybe, say, the Florida State game early in the season, but just the cumulative effect from playing all of those teams back to back, I think could spell trouble for Clemson. Not that they'll lose any of those games, but that is quite a stretch coming out of the bye week, playing Miami, NC State, Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, North Carolina, and South Carolina. It is a tough second half of the schedule, I think, and you're playing some teams that could beat you. Obviously, that goes without saying. So Notre Dame's going to be a super, super important game this season. I think some wrongs have to be righted this coming season with that game. We have to come out. We have to play more physical. We have to assert our dominance. We gotta go out there and not look the way that we did. If you lose a game, a competitive game, you can live with something like that. But the way that Clemson lost the Notre Dame game, you can never live with a loss like that, in my opinion. Our defensive line got blown off the ball repeatedly. Our offensive line was on roller skates the entire game. We kept throwing screen pass after screen pass. It was just an absolute mess for the Notre Dame game last season. And look for that wrong to be righted this season, hopefully, with our new tooled offense under Garrett Riley. And we look to move forward and have a little bit better scheme this year, utilizing the tight ends, utilizing the running game, becoming a run first to set up the pass kind of offense is kind of what I'm looking forward to this season. So we are 3 games into our last half of the season, the 6-game stretch. We lost Jordan Bowman, guys. So we will stand by and for a couple minutes, see if he could pop back on. But following the Notre Dame game, we got Georgia Tech coming up. That game is going to be at Clemson. So we got Georgia Tech, a team that obviously struggled immensely last season. Their coach got fired early on in the year. Interim coach comes in. He kind of stabilizes them. The players really buy in, start playing really hard. They do win some games and put up a fight. They didn't quit. They absolutely fought to the end of the season, and you got to respect that. Obviously, he ended up being hired. He is now the new coach at Georgia Tech, and he looks to, kind of start his reign at Georgia Tech and kind of see where he goes. They got some questions to answer at quarterback. Obviously, they lost Jeff Sims. Their backups were not very good when Jeff Sims went down with injury last season. So some question marks to answer there. If they can put that position together, they have to get better. They have to continue to make strides. But honestly, I don't think Georgia Tech's going to be any sort of threat to Clemson this season. They had their best shots the past 2 seasons with Clemson. They didn't get the job done. They didn't close the door against Clemson. And I just think Clemson's offense is going to be so much more improved this season. Georgia Tech's not going to be a threat to Clemson this coming season. So that's my thoughts on Georgia Tech. Let's go to the comment section, see what you guys are talking about while we wait for Jordan Bowman to pop back on here. Clemson got outcoached and out-schemed in that game. I'm assuming you're talking about the Notre Dame game. Absolutely. They did. It was just a complete annihilation on every aspect of the ball. Offense, defense, special teams played terrible. The coaching was terrible. Everything about the game was terrible. There was nothing really good to say about it. John Sarian, didn't Freeman pretty much say our offense made it easy for their defense? I don't know if he said that or not, but if he did, he wouldn't be lying. That's absolutely true. He definitely we definitely made it easy for him, throwing a whole bunch of screen passes and just horrible play calling, not challenging the defense at all. When you don't take advantage of matchups and throw screens all game. Yeah, again, all stuff we've talked about a ton when it comes to the Notre Dame game, right? John Saren says, I thought he was referring to how he could predict the play almost every snap. Yeah, well, we've talked about it as Clemson fans a lot in the past, couple seasons about how our offense has become so predictable, and it did not challenge defenses, and it became stale. Me and Jordan Bowman got on and did a live reaction to every Clemson football game this season, and I can remember numerous times where we were like, yep, I knew exactly which play was coming next. So no big surprises there. Georgia Tech probably expecting big things out of Haynes King. Probably. We'll see. So I just got finished. I know you popped off there for a little bit, Jordan. I just got finished talking about Georgia Tech and, kind of the struggles that they went through last season, kind of turned the boat around, did some good things under the interim coach. He obviously gets hired on as the permanent head coach. They obviously lost Jeff Sims through the transfer portal. They lost some other players through the transfer portal. They got some turnover. They got some big question marks to answer. I think, they could be heading in a better direction, but Georgia Tech's got a ton of work to do, if we're being honest. They have a ton of work to do to be any sort of competing in the ACC at all. I don't think if they didn't get the job done these past 2 seasons against a more vulnerable Clemson team, then it's not going to happen this coming season, I don't think. Just my opinion.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. They're going to be I think they're going to be another interesting team, but they have a lot of turnover. As far as the staff, they did retain their defensive coordinator, which Andrew Thacker, who I think did a pretty nice job toward the latter half of the season. They thought they kind of developed into a pretty nice unit there, which is ironic. You fire Jeff Collins. It was supposed to be, Jeff Collins is a defensive guy. That was supposed to be his calling card. And then as soon as you fire him, the defense stops
gets
sucking,
better.
so.
Yeah.
Addition
by subtraction.
But no, that roster is not in great shape right now. They did not recruit. Their recruiting class isn't anything to write home about. And I'm not even sure if they've, their staff is fully put together. But they have a limited salary pool, and the investment doesn't really seem to be there. So I mean, they're going to have to rely on some big time transfers. They as John Terry mentioned, they bring in Haynes King. They're high on Zach Pyron, who played towards the end of the year. He has some talent. He showed a little bit in the latter half of the year. Other than that, there's not a ton there.
I know they brought in some portal guys and stuff like that, but I just, Brent Key, he's got his work cut out for him, man. They're asking him to work a miracle out there. It's not like Georgia Tech, invest all this money in football. I don't know what they expect. I don't know very many Georgia Tech fans, but I don't know what you expect. Your university has to start investing in football if you ever want to claw your way out of the basement in Georgia, if you will. If you ever want to compete with the likes of Georgia or some of the more successful teams in the ACC, you got to buy in. It's not just the football coaches or the players, right? The university has to buy in, and I'm not sure that's something that Georgia Tech is doing. So, with that said, Brent Key's got his work cut out for him. I wish him luck. It seems like the players really like him. They like playing for him. So maybe there's something there. Maybe he can, maybe he'll be the guy to articulate to the administration what he needs in order to be successful there. We'll see. Say a prayer for Sea-Dog before he loses his mind.
Shout out to Sea-Dog. If you guys don't know, he's a Georgia Tech creator on this channel that we are good friends with. Make sure you check his channel out. Just type in Sea-Dog, the letter C, and then dog with 2 G's at the end. He makes some really good Georgia Tech content. So make sure you guys check him out.
Makes amazing videos. Hilarious dude. The ACC show this past Tuesday over on Pigskin Pete's channel was absolutely epic, dude. I was rolling the entire time. Sea-Dog was on a rampage, dude.
I didn't even have to say anything.
He was going for people's throats. He is bought in on Brent Key, which I don't blame him. It is what it is. He has to be. Georgia Tech also got a tight end they like and another wide receiver from Bama. We'll see. Like I said, I just think Brent Key's got his work cut out for him. That roster is not great, but they have brought in some good pieces. You just gotta hope the pieces around those guys can elevate the other ones. So moving on, last 2 games of the season, we have North Carolina. Drake May obviously had a great first starting season at North Carolina, absolutely lit up the scoreboard, threw the ball all over the yard. An amazing quarterback, to be completely honest. But you just can't trust North Carolina. They're always that team that, they tend to get quite a bit of hype. They tend to be towards the top of the ACC. but they always lose games that don't make sense, right? And they always seem to underperform when the lights get the brightest and it's the most important games. And I don't know if that's no hate on Mac Brown or anything like that. I don't know if that's kind of like on him or it's just I don't know what's going on with North Carolina, but I just don't. They're just a team I can't trust. They're going to lose a game that doesn't make sense, and they tend to underperform when the lights are the brightest. So that's kind of my take on North Carolina. I do think they'll be a really good team next year. Obviously, they have Drake May. He's going to put up video game numbers again next season. I have no doubts about it. It probably doesn't even matter who he's throwing the ball to. The guy could just absolutely throw the heck out of the ball. But their defense leaves a lot to be desired. We'll see if they can make any sort of respectable strides on that side of the ball this season. Again, without that, you're not going to be able to take the steps that you want to. It doesn't matter how good Drake May plays. Doesn't matter how many points that you end up putting up per game. That defense, if it's as bad as it was last season and as bad as it has been in the past, it's going to cost you a game somewhere. That's just the name. You have to have at least a serviceable defense. I'm not saying you got to have a top 5 defense or anything like that, but they can't be as bad as North Carolina's defenses have been. So they got some work to do as well, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, you said it. And really on the offensive side of the ball, I mean, they're replacing offensive coordinator Phil Longo. He took the offensive coordinator job at Wisconsin. So, they're going to have a new offense. Chip Lindsey coming in. And Chip Lindsey, he's a guy that's well respected in the industry. He's worked with some really good quarterbacks. But his last few stops, he has not gotten great reviews, and the offenses haven't been particularly great. So, especially with North Carolina losing some of the pieces they do, they lose Josh Downs, who is just a phenomenal talent at receiver. Yeah. He's gone. Antoine Green, who had been there a long time, one of their big bodied guy that they could kind of throw the ball up to, who was there for a long time. He's gone. So replacing that production, they've brought in some talent in the transfer portal. So we'll see how that meshes. But it's going to be a new offense for Drake May to work with, and a new system. So we'll see how that meshes. And then on the defensive side of the ball, not only were they terrible, but the guys that they have, a lot of them have transferred out. They lost a ton of defensive back talent to the transfer portal. Storm Duck is gone. Tony Grimes is gone. It's not a really loaded roster right now as far as that's concerned. And they fired their defensive backs coach Dre Bly, UNC alum, really great corner in the NFL. Which I don't know. It might be addition by subtraction, considering how poorly North Carolina's defensive back play was. He recruited really well, but they didn't. They never played up to their talent level. So I don't know. But yeah, a lot of questions for this North Carolina team. As far as this is concerned, it's they're going to be heavily reliant on a lot of portal pieces. But you got to hope Drake May just continues to build on his success. I mean, he certainly has the talent. It's just depends on if this system is going to be able to kind of match the production that Phil Longo's offense was for many years. So we'll see.
Yeah. Like you said, a lot of questions for North Carolina coming into this season. So, all right, let's move on to the final regular season game for Clemson football in 2023. And that is the South Carolina Gamecocks. Now, Jordan, let's talk about the game that was the South Carolina game last season.
Do we have to we can kind of it can be one of those unspoken things. Like, it's just like, we know what happened. We acknowledge it happened, but it's like, we just kind of skirt around the topic because, oh man, I don't even want to think about it.
I understand, but I got to say a little bit of it just to reiterate the importance of this game. Not that this game is not always the most important game on the schedule as a true diehard orange-blooded Clemson fan, right? But this game is even more important this coming season because of how the game went last season against South Carolina and all the streaks that were ended in our house by our arch rival who hadn't beat us in 9 seasons. Absolutely an embarrassing game, unacceptable. We've been through it. We don't have to rehash the actual game. I will save you from that. But there is more of a bad taste in my mouth for this game because of ending our home game winning streak, ending our winning streak period, basically. Our home winning streak anyway. I think it was at like 40 games when that had happened.
40.
The last time we lost in Death Valley was 2016, which is crazy, by the way. I guess it had to end eventually, but that's the last team that I would want it to end against. So a lot of revenge factors coming in for this game, more than usual. South Carolina, of course, does bring Spencer Rattler back. I think they had a couple transfers. I'm not sure that they had a ton, but they had a few.
They
transfers.
had a few. They had quite. They had some key pieces.
Yeah,
they brought in some pieces and they returned a couple of key guys. So and new offensive coordinator. This will be an interesting team to see how, whether they can build on that into the season last year. So
absolutely. And good thing for both South Carolina and Clemson is, by the time you play each other, you should be the best version of your team that you can possibly be. It's the last game of the season. It's the in-state rival. And I hope we walk into Willie B, the trailer park, and stomp the crap out of the South Carolina Gamecocks. I hate South Carolina. That goes without saying as a Clemson fan. Yeah. But, I guess Shane Beamer seems like a nice enough guy. I don't know. That's the nicest thing I can come up with to say about him right now.
This game is extremely important. This is probably, if I had to rank, I said the Florida State game was the most important game on the schedule. I probably still stand by that. But if Florida State's the most important, this is like a 1B. It's like 1A, 1B.
Yeah, we'll just go 1A, 1B. Yeah, absolutely.
I think you need to win this game. Just considering how the game went last year, and the kind of the momentum that they've built from that win. They've gotten a lot of good news on the recruiting trail, and we'll probably get some really good news tomorrow too.
Quite a few in-state rivals that they've gotten. Yep.
Yeah. So. And more in the future. So they've gotten a lot of momentum on the recruiting trail. They're really starting to load up. So I think this is a game you need to win because I think you've just from losing that game, you gave them a lot of momentum with a lot of in-state recruits, and that's it's not great. I mean, Clemson always recruits. They recruit nationally and they can get guys from wherever, but it's always nice to know you can get somebody from in-state when you want, and so that's something that you want to get back because they're cooking with a lot of gas right now. So
they seem
you're losing some recruiting battles to them. So I think that's the important thing. I think winning that credibility back is huge because the perception right now is that South Carolina is a team that's on the rise, Clemson's on the decline, or they're just or they've plateaued. So, recruits are really vibing with Shane Beamer and that staff. So I think beating them on the field is going to be key this season. So this is an important game.
Yeah, I mean, and you're right. The overall sentiment is, South Carolina's they got this new, young, energetic head coach. They're on the rise. They're building a team. They're building a program. They're just come be a part of the change, right? Come be a part of the reason that South Carolina football, gets back to, whatever. And then, kind of the story of Clemson, what you said, we've kind of plateaued and some think we're on, sort of a decline, maybe a slow decline. I think some of that sentiment has started to change with the firing of Brandon Streeter and the hiring of Garrett Riley. I think that started to shift the tide there. But you're right, we are losing some in-state battles in recruiting, and that's never going to feel good, right? So reasserting the dominance on the field and reminding little brother of where they are in the pecking order of football, college football in South Carolina is always of utmost importance. And we really do have to start doing better with in-state recruiting, I think. We're starting to, we just lose too many high-name guys. And I know, a couple of them, this past cycle particularly grew up South Carolina fans and all that kind of stuff. And if you did grow up a South Carolina fan and you're looking at it right now, why wouldn't you want to, go there and try to, see what you could do? I get it, but I don't like it. And payback time for them and Notre Dame this coming season. But that wraps up the Clemson schedule. An interesting schedule to say the least. I like the schedule. I think it's laid out pretty well, although I think the back end of our schedule is quite the run to expect a team to go on. We are going to have to stay super healthy to get through that stretch. Like I said, Florida State may be the toughest game on our schedule, at least on paper right now. If you're looking at it, Florida State's probably the toughest game on Clemson's schedule. But when you look at the totality of those last 6 games back-to-back without a bye week, that's going to be a tough stretch to get through. So I'm not saying we're going to lose any of those games at all or any of those teams that we play in the last 6. I'm not saying they're better than us, but when you play that kind of talent back-to-back week in and week out, something can always happen, right? And there's always, attrition with injuries and stuff like that. So Clemson's going to have, I don't think anybody's going to be able to say that, Clemson's got a cakewalk schedule this season, although they probably will anyway. So because we play in the ACC, so of course we have a cakewalk schedule, but
yeah. But yeah, this is as far as the ACC schedules go, this isn't one I would call easy. So you got some tricky games, you got some games, some pitfalls that you can, or some speed bumps or potholes that you could possibly trip over if you're not careful. This is a game. This is a schedule. You'll be favored in every single game. And you'll be expected to win every single game. So you got to go out and take care of business. So that's what we're looking for. And I think the schedule, while it has its landmines, it sets up for where you can build some depth and really get ramp up in the first half of the year and get you some momentum to get through that last half and that final stretch. So. You got to take care of business. You got to. We need to see improvement in a lot of areas from over last season, and But I think this is a team that can certainly win every single game on this schedule, and be right back in Charlotte and hopefully back in college football playoff contention. So. We'll definitely have a lot to talk about over the offseason, and we will have plenty of time to talk about the schedule. But it's nice to look at and get an early look at some of these teams and then kind of get a feel for what the schedule may look like when the fall rolls around.
Yeah, it's kind of cool to do a quick a snapshot like we did now with Clemson's schedule, because after spring and heading into fall and all that kind of stuff, when we inevitably do this again, looking at Clemson's schedule again with updated information after spring and after the May transfer portal, and once you got rosters really locked in right for the upcoming season, it'll be interesting to see if any of our opinions change on any of these teams or any particular game. So that'll be fun to do later on in the off season. So be on the lookout for that, guys. That'll be really fun to do. Looking at Clemson's schedule, would you change anything if you could?
I mean,
would you move a game? Would you move the open date? Would you do anything like that?
probably maybe I'd move the open date a little bit later because and just if I'm trying to strategically just place it where you have the best opportunity to get through on that schedule unscathed. I think it could be a little bit later and closer to the back half because it is a pretty rigorous one. So
yeah,
as far as ACC schedules go, so we'll see. But I'd probably move it maybe a week or two later. But
yeah,
I think this is manageable. It's not. It shouldn't scare anybody.
I'd probably move it a couple weeks later and play Miami and NC State first, and then go into the bye week, and then maybe finish with the last 4 games.
Yeah.
Or put it in between the Miami and NC State game. Either way. But yeah, I think moving it slightly later would be beneficial because you do have those, a couple tune-up games earlier on in the season where you can kind of rest some guys. So it may, with those 2 games back-to-back, you may have the ability to, be a little healthier and push that open date back a little bit in the season. But we don't have that authority, believe it or not, Jordan.
No.
Believe it or not, we do not have that authority. So somebody asked an interesting question that I want to get to before we move on from our current topic. Ben Adams gets in and said, who is the sleeper in the ACC next year? Do you have anyone in mind that could qualify, as a sleeper team for the ACC?
I do.
Right. Let's hear it.
And I talked about this on the ACC schedule release show. If you guys want to go and when this show's over, you want to go check that out. I was on that with Mark and a couple of other ACC fans. Just kind of discussing the schedule as it was released. I said that, and especially when it released, I said Louisville. And the reason why is, obviously, they're going through a head coaching change. Obviously, Jeff Brom, their prodigal son, they're the one they've been calling to come home for a while now is actually finally coming home from Purdue.
Jeff Brom's been going to Louisville for like 5 years now, right?
Yeah, I know, but it actually happened this time, and I think it was a good opportunity. With Scott Satterfield, up and leaving. So it kind of presented Purdue had a nice season. It felt like a good time. So I think it's good timing for them. But they have Louisville, I think, has a really underrated roster. They have a lot of talented guys. They're bringing in a pretty recruiting class. And especially on the defensive side of the ball, they were really good last year. And they bring back a lot of pieces from that defense. And I think the biggest thing is that they don't play Clemson and they don't play Florida State. I'm sure Louisville fans are thinking the college football gods with the scheduling format change, no divisions. They no longer are guaranteed to play Clemson and Florida State every year, and they don't get either one of them on this schedule. So the presumed top 2 teams in the conference, Louisville does not have to play. So I think the funniest thing is if Clemson and Florida State play each other, so one of them will have a loss, a conference loss. If Louisville were to find a way to go, 7-1 or 8-0 in conference, depending on how the tiebreaker situation works out, Louisville could have to spoil a potential Clemson Florida State rematch. If assuming Clemson or Florida State goes 8-0 and the other goes 7-1, and or 6-2 or whatever, and Louisville matches that or exceeds that, depending on the tiebreakers, Louisville could end up being one of the 2 teams in Charlotte and kind of spoil that. So that'd be a really interesting tournament. But I think their schedule sets up really favorable, so they're a team that I think I wouldn't sleep on. Just because I think the schedule is, as far as the ACC schedules go, I think it's pretty easy and it sets up pretty well. I like how it sets up for them.
Absolutely. David Wood says Duke again. I don't know if you could be considered a sleeper team if you went 9-4 the previous season.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of hard to call them a sleeper team.
I could see them doing.
They're returning their quarterback too, and it's just it doesn't. But
I could see them doing well again. But I don't know if I would classify that as a sleeper team. Big Mix says Georgia Tech. Okay, interesting.
Maybe I don't see it. I would be surprised because I don't really like the shape. How that roster is shaping up right now. But we'll see.
I think
the coaching staff really.
I think people are going to have to give Brent Key some time to really get that program together. Because they went from the triple option to that disaster of a coach that I'm sure Georgia Tech fans don't want to hear the name of. But, he never really got the program in any better shape. He never won more than 3 games a season. So Brent Key, again, I've said it a million times on this show already, but he's got his work cut out for him. I'm not saying he's the wrong guy. I'm not saying he's the right guy. Honestly, I don't know enough about Brent Key to, say either way. The only thing that I can say is it seemed that the players rallied around him last season, which is a good thing, and that he's going to have to garner buy-in from the university. But outside of that, I don't see Georgia Tech making too much noise next season. But again, that's the whole idea of a sleeper team, right? Somebody that comes out of nowhere. So that's an interesting pick. I think Georgia Tech will use the portal to get on an RPO offense. The defense has done well, missing 1 or 2 pieces on offense. Yeah, they got to get the quarterback situation figured out first and foremost. So if they are going to be a sleeper team, we know a team's only going to go as far as their quarterback takes them. So
I think the problem is they lost some pieces on defense. So it's that defense definitely they turned into a solid unit in the back half of the season, but a lot of those guys they had are gone. Particularly, Charlie Thomas, their standout linebacker, pass rusher. He kind of undersized, but just a monster. He gave Clemson a lot of issues in the opener. I remember. I think he's gone. And they've had some other key pieces kind of, enter the transfer portal or graduate. So, I'm not sure that defense will reload the same. But, hey, I don't know. Andrew Thacker seemed to have figured something out, maybe towards the end of the year. So maybe Georgia Tech's defense has more talent on left that I'm giving them credit for because they looked so bad when Collins was the head coach. So, yeah.
Yeah, so some interesting things going on in the ACC next year, right? And we'll continue to talk about it through the offseason. We'll mainly talk about Clemson here, but we'll talk about other teams as well. As interesting topics come up and things are changing, and I'm sure we'll talk about when Miami finally hires an OC. We'll talk about that. There's all sorts of stuff. This is mainly a Clemson show, but again, Clemson is in the ACC, so any ACC news is pretty relevant to Clemson as well. So, keep an eye out for all that stuff. But I think that'll do it for the Clemson schedule portion of the show. The next thing I wanted to get into, Jordan, was the introductory press conference of Garrett Riley and Dabo Swinney. I'm sure we mentioned a couple comments at the beginning of the show talking about some comments that Dabo Swinney had, some comments that Garrett Riley had. And I think a few interesting things came out of that press conference. But where we will start is the most obvious place, I guess. Dabo Swinney made some comments, not unlike comments that he's made in the past about a certain sect of the Clemson fan base, if that's how you want to put it, or the way that some of the noise was surrounding the program this season and in the past few seasons, I guess you could say. and that is that Clemson was underachieving. They wanted change. They felt like Clemson's football was trending in the wrong direction. And he made he made a lot of comments that you've heard Dabo Swinney make a million times. So, what were your thoughts on what Dabo Swinney said and some of the reaction to his comments?
Yeah. Dabo kind of went scorched earth on the fans.
He did. He absolutely
did. Listen, I think Dabo certainly made some really good key points. I do think there is merit to a lot of what he said about Clemson fan. You got to have perspective, and you've got to be able to enjoy the winning. And you've got to be able to have perspective, enjoy the winning, and I think there's to that. But I also think, and this is kind of where I had issue with some of what he said.
Yeah,
he seemed to criticize the fans for having genuine concerns and gripes about how the program was being, maybe not how the program was being run, but some of the decisions, the product on the field, and stuff like that. Legitimate, concerns that any fan base would have, whether they're, a 3-9, a perennial 3-9 team, or they're a perennial college football playoff contender. I think there were just a lot of things, particularly on the offensive side of the ball, whether it was from coaching to personnel, that just wasn't good. And I think Dabo, without saying it explicitly, acknowledged all of that by making the move he did. I think he knew there was a lot wrong with the offense, and you could tell it weighed heavily on him. His face on during that Orange Bowl press conference was pretty brutal, and he even said that one stuck with him. He said you run 100 plays and you don't score.
100 plays, 31 first downs.
Yeah,
and you don't score.
34 first downs, I think.
34 first downs. But yeah, he said as much as in his press conference. He was like, he said after that Orange Bowl loss, like, I pretty much knew a change needed to happen.
Yeah. So I think going off on the fans, I thought was a little much. Like that. They're, the fans that are. Fans should be appreciative, but when you preach that, and I know people kind of, I'm not trying to throw best as the standard out in his face, because I know what he means when he says that. It doesn't mean that Clemson has to be 15-0 every year, but when things aren't hitting at the way they should be, given the investment, the talent level, the resources that you have. Fans are the ones that come in and spend tons of money, invest tons of money, even though they're not like lush with cash, to support the team every year. The Clemson fan base is one of the most loyal and awesome fan bases in all of college football. And I think everyone in here can agree with that. They travel well, and they consistently sell out home games. They show up they've shown up all throughout this football team's history, whether they've been good, whether they've been bad. And they are the blood of this football program. And so I think when they have, I'm not saying that Dabo should be taking advice from the fans. But when they have legitimate, legitimate, verifiable, obvious issues and obvious gripes with what's going on, I don't think you should be, upset with them over calling it out. I think that's your job as a fan. It's part of the experience of being a fan. It's not just rainbows and sunshine and I love this team no matter what, and everything is going to be okay, and all of that. That's fine if you're like that, but I don't think there's an issue with also being critical when it's called for, and I think it was called for. Larry Williams had a really good article today on Rivals, basically talking about how Dabo had a lot to say, and a lot of what he said was spot on, but the criticism, some of the criticism of the fans was a little too much, because the fans did have legitimate reasons to be upset and concerned. And I think you can have it, but you can have it both ways. I don't think there's I don't think you have to be one way or the other. It's either you can acknowledge that there are issues with the program while also not being a terrible person and attacking players and coaches and doing all of that. So there is a right way to do this, and I think calling out the fans that were doing that, that were being critical for a good reason is not what you should do, really. But hey, I'm willing to. Dabo can go on as many rants about the fans as he wants, as if he's going to make the changes and decisions that are necessary to keep this program, at the top or near the top, and peak, running at peak efficiency. So if he's, I mean, I don't love it, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I didn't love all of his comment. I do agree with parts, much like you said, I agree with parts of what Dabo Swinney said. I agree that, yes, obviously he has done a ton for Clemson football. He's done the most for Clemson football than anybody ever has in the history of Clemson football. We have won, double-digit wins for, 12 years now. We've had, it's the amazing run that we have been on, okay? He spouted off the numbers 100 times before, and I agree with that part of it. But here's where you kind of lose me. You kind of lose me with, he tends to, when he's talking to the fans like this, and I'm not taking offense to anything that he said, but I just wish, I feel like some of the stuff that he says when he's talking about the fans in this way is really disingenuous. He makes it, he pretends or makes it appear like that he thinks if he doesn't go 15-0, these fans have been so spoiled because of what's happened in Clemson football that we're not going to be happy. And that's just a disingenuous take. That's okay. I'm not saying no one in the Clemson fan base is saying that. Of course, you have your small sect of crazies in every fan base, right? But when you're talking about the majority of Clemson fans, the arguments and the things that we were, having issue with, the things that we were, bringing up concerns about and saying that changes need to be made was play on the field, how it looked on the field. Yes, you still won 10 games in 2021. You still won 11 games this season, 11, right? Yeah. And that's great. We're not criticizing that you won 11 games and won the ACC. Right? See, that's where it gets misconstrued, that Clemson fans aren't happy that we won 11 games, and we're not happy. It's not enough that we won the ACC. It's not that. We look at the talent on the field. We look at where we recruit. We can look at these sites and see where Clemson ranks based off of talent on the team. And we rank top 5 with talent on the field. And when you're producing an offense that looks like Clemson's looked, obviously something's not right. Obviously something is going wrong. And yes, is it amazing that we still pulled out 11 wins, won the ACC, and got to a New Year's 6 game? Yes. But he admitted all the things that the fans were saying all season by firing the offensive coordinator and hiring Garrett Riley. Dabo, like you agree with us. You just don't agree with maybe how we, voice our opinions. And, maybe that's okay. And I don't think any sane Clemson fan is out there saying that, Dabo Swinney doesn't know how to run a program and this, that, and the other. We were simply voicing legitimate concerns that were happening in the Clemson program. And I'd stand by what I said all season, that offensive staff, as currently constructed as they were, could not get the job done. Me and you said it a million times on this show, and we were right. And clearly Dabo Swinney agreed with us because he fired the offensive coordinator and hired Garrett Riley. Clemson fans aren't spoiled But when you recruit to the level that we have, and you have the roster talent that Clemson has, if it's not getting developed, if it's not getting put into position of producing on the field, then we are going to look to the coaching staff. And we are going to say, what is going wrong? What is happening? It wasn't one season. It's been a steady decline. It hit bad in 2021. It got a little bit better in 2022, but it wasn't right. Clemson's offense never looked okay. It never looked good. It had its moments, but overall, when you look at the totality of it, it wasn't a good offense. So a change has to be made. And the argument that remember how bad it was and remember how good it's been is not an argument for fans to stop complaining about issues within the program or issues on the team. That's never a good argument. I hate that argument. It's such an old, tired argument. Well, you guys don't remember back when we were winning. And I'm not saying Dad was saying this, but I've heard other Clemson fans tell other Clemson fans that, oh, well, you don't remember the Tommy West days and you don't remember the so-and-so days. I don't care. It doesn't matter.
Hatfield, Tommy Bowden. You just
Who cares? Who cares about Tommy Bowden? Who cares about Hatfield? Who cares about any of those dudes that didn't get the job done? First of all, they didn't have the talented roster that Clemson currently has. Second of all, why would I want to go back to that? No one wants to go back to that. So in order to not go back to that, there has to be accountability when slippage starts to happen. Somebody has to call it out and be like, hey, I'm looking around and everybody else looks like they're getting better, and we don't look like we're getting better. We look like we're getting worse. What's going on with that? You know? So, right, yeah, exactly right. This just means he's becoming complacent. And I think there was some complacency, and there was obviously some staleness in the offensive side of the ball. But he made the necessary changes, and I think that just says that he understands more than we do what's going on with this Clemson program, and I can't fault him. I don't like all of the stuff that he said, but I get it. I get it from his perspective. I understand it, and he's still putting Clemson football first, and he's still making the decisions that it takes to keep them at an elite level. And I've never been one of these ones. Well, maybe Dabo Swinney has a lifelong contract with Clemson, and I think he's competitive to the point where he doesn't want to see this thing go in a bad direction, which is why he made the change. There's a reason. It wasn't easy for him to fire Brandon Streeter. Brandon Streeter was a friend. Brandon Streeter was a player for Clemson. They have a Brandon Streeter award that they give out. So he is woven into the fabric of what Clemson is. So I know it wasn't easy, but I'm happy to see him do it. And I think we are trending in the right direction. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. You said it. Yeah. You said it about as good as anyone possibly could. Yeah. I mean, as long as Dabo continues to make, the decisions that are needed, it's okay. Because I think the biggest thing in a lot of Clemson fans were scared of was that there wasn't going to be changes made. And that was a scary thing. And, because it's just, you see the backslide on offense and you're losing games that you should be winning. You're uncompetitive in games that you should be competitive in. And it's clear that the talent, was not being developed and not being coached and not being put in position, the best positions they possibly could to succeed. And, it's up to the head coach to determine what that is. I mean, the fans can only, they can voice their opinion on social media and say all they want. But at the end of the day, it's down to the man. And I'm just glad to see that the man in charge, is, still willing to pull the trigger and make that tough decision. So I didn't love everything Dabo said. He had some good points. He had some points I didn't really like, but it's at the end of the day, I feel a lot better about where the program is heading than I did 2 months ago. So
yeah. I'm not upset with anything that he said or anything like that. Like I said, I completely get where he's coming from. And we're like you said, we're headed in a good direction. We all know Dabo Swinney is stubborn, but he's a competitor and he wants to win, and that's very evident.
Yeah,
so,
and you know what's funny? I had one thing I did think that he said was really funny was when he talked about how back in 2011 when they won the ACC championship and how there were 5,000 fans that greeted them back at the buses, and he says he's like, now we come back from winning the ACC and there's nobody there. I'm like, well, Dabo, you guys, the buses could go around to Reeves now. They drop the dudes off. You don't even tell us when you're coming back.
Yeah.
We
can't get over there.
It's not the most accessible to the general public.
Yeah.
They
got gates and stuff over there, man.
Yeah. I thought it was really funny. I was like, well, it's not like you guys publicize when you're coming back like you used to. So maybe the fans would be there, but I thought that was I thought that was a silly thing to say, but
right.
I understand what he's trying to say, but
yeah, and I mean that's par for the course. When you do something over and over and over again, obviously, less and less people show up for the celebration. I get that. I understand what he was getting at there, but that's comical. John Sarin says, I don't think he was complacent. He had a vision, and it didn't work out for the offense. It's not like Streeter was an OC for 3 years. The correction was made pretty quickly. Yeah, no, I give Dabo full credit for pulling the chip because honestly, if you would have asked me at the end of the season, I did not think this was going to happen. By no means did I think he was going to fire Brandon Streeter. I didn't think there was going to be a change. I thought we would have Brandon Streeter for at least another season, possibly more. But yeah, no, he definitely pulled the trigger quickly. Which is good. So if the Orange Bowl is what it took, then I guess it's just one of the things that we had. I'm never going to say I'm happy we lost, but if that's what it took, then maybe that's what was best for the program to lose in that fashion on the national stage. But yeah. So let's talk about Garrett Riley got asked quite a few questions about the Clemson offense and kind of his philosophy. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about first was one of the reporters asked Garrett Riley, why Clemson? Why'd you choose Clemson? I'm sure they weren't the only person interested. You only spent one season at TCU. Why Clemson? And he made a response basically alluding to the fact that Clemson just checked all the boxes. It was one of those places that checked all the boxes that could pull him away from TCU. He said he was happy at TCU. He'd only been there a season. His wife's family's from Texas. His family's from Texas. He's got a lot of ties there. So, but he said it was kind of, I guess, too good to pass up type of situation. So, when you hear that about your program, it's kind of it's a good thing to hear another coach from the outside kind of say that, because he did say Clemson wasn't a program that he followed super closely. He didn't have any real ties to Dabo, so it was kind of out of the blue that we kind of pulled him to Clemson. So that's kind of a cool thing for Clemson, I think. So
absolutely.
To be able to pull, the top assistant in the nation. I know Dabo said he talked to Lincoln Riley prior to, I guess, the national championship, but didn't speak with Garrett until the day after the national championship was over. So they asked them prying questions.
That, though?
I don't know. I don't know if I do. Okay, I could believe that Dabo didn't speak personally with Garrett Riley before the national championship game was over. But he did admit to talking to his brother Lincoln before. So, and he said Lincoln's one of the guys that in the profession that he trusts, and one of the guys that he can go to and speak in confidence. So I'm sure when he called Lincoln, and he said when he called him, he wasn't even sure that he was going to make the change. So maybe I'm assuming he called Lincoln to gauge interest for Garrett and kind of what he thought of it, and then probably, based his decision. He said he had, 2 or 3 people on his list that he was going to vet. He never named them, the other 2 people. So I don't think we'll ever know who those other 2 people, if they existed, or who they are. It was interesting to see the reporters kind of press Dabo on the process and how he made the decision. But he did say that the Orange Bowl was a big factor in him determining that a change needed to be made on the offensive side of the ball. So, and I think we made the best offensive coordinator hire that we could have. Garrett Riley described his offense as fast and violent. Described it as a run-first concept. He kind of talked about his time at Appalachian State and how those guys are so good at running schemes and running the ball, and he picked up a lot from that, and that's kind of integrated into his offense. And it really is a run-first spread-style offense. So I'm really interested to see the stuff that this guy's going to be able to do with the likes of Will Shipley, Phil Maffa, our big tight ends, Jake Brenningstool. It's going to be – I think it's going to be a breath of fresh air for Clemson. And I can't wait to see what he does with this offense. But I like some of the stuff that he said. I like his philosophy as he described it. And, I think he's going to be a good fit for Clemson. He seems to be connecting with recruits already, so that's always a good thing. It probably helps that he's
certainly connecting with recruits already. Well,
yeah,
there might be some good news tomorrow. That's all I'm saying.
Little tease for the Clemson fans out there. But I mean, it probably helps that he's super young, right? And honestly, how Dabo runs his program, what a place to be for a young guy with a wife and 2 young kids. Dabo really builds that family atmosphere at Clemson. Families come to the facility. They have like family dinner night, like once a week or something like that, I think. I think it's a nice small area, small town type feel. So, although I don't think that will help us keep him any longer than he's going to want to stay, which is probably not too long. But we'll enjoy the ride while he is here. And hopefully return to national contention next season with a college football playoff appearance.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and hearing those words, you already mentioned it. Hearing that the offense was going to be violent and fast. I don't think I've ever heard a Clemson offensive coordinator talk like that.
No, definitely not.
So, that was music to my ears. I think someone in the can also talk about the adapting to players, which was huge.
Yes,
because that's something that's been a gripe about the offense for a while now. Is the offense not really seeming to fit the skill sets of the guys on the team and the personnel. So that's something that has been characteristic of Garrett Riley's offenses and even his brothers, and being able to have that adaptive ability. So that's going to be huge. And having a power running game. I mean, it's technically an air raid, but it's built around the run, and it's very malleable, and you're able to kind of change it around to fit your what you have in your room. So I think that's a really exciting prospect. So I think this was the perfect hire at the right time for Clemson. Really excited to see the stuff that comes out in spring game, and as we get closer and closer to the season. So
you can't help but be excited as a Clemson fan. Garrett Riley saying all the right things. I think he had an amazing first press conference. The violent and fast will stick in Clemson fans' minds for all of the offseason. I'm sure Will Shipley about jumped out of his seat when he heard violent, because he is probably one of the most violent running backs there are. That's just kind of his mentality. So I'm sure he's all about that. And hearing him say he's not married to any certain plays, he's not, I'm not so prideful of a coach to we're going to run this play because I like running this play, and really looking at your personnel and building your scheme based off of what they do well. Something Brent Venables did very well while he was at Clemson. It's really nice to hear a coordinator say that. I saw somebody mention we took what the defense gave us, Tony Elliott and Braden Streeter. Yeah, I look forward to not hearing that anymore. Clemson has the talent to dictate to defenses what they want to do. And it's sounding like with Garrett Riley, we will turn that page, and we will see a lot more of Clemson dictating the tempo, dictating the pace of the game, and dictating what exactly we want to do on offense, which will be a nice change of pace. I can't wait. You can't help but be excited as a Clemson fan. I know everybody, typically not always. Some fans disagree with some hires, some coaching hires. This is not one of them. I know a lot of fan bases when they hire, coaches, they're always all in and they're always, super excited. But, I truly do think this is an amazing fit for Clemson. I think it's going to be, one of those seamless fits. And he's got plenty to work with, that's for sure. And I think he's a great offensive mind. So there should not be a lack of production. As one of the reporters mentioned to him, how he feels about the expectation that's already being put on him, about Clemson being a national contender again, and, some of the fans talking, and he's like, look, there's always pressure. He's like, nobody's going to have higher expectations than I have for myself. So, again, saying all the right things. We'll see in spring, but I expect good things. I think Cade's a perfect quarterback for him as well. So I'm sure Cade's excited to get to work.
He is. Very much is.
Yep. WB2DX says, what's the opinion on no divisions in the ACC? I like it. I don't have any problems with the no divisions. We will finally have the opportunity as a conference to put the two best teams in the conference championship every single year. And I think that's important for the conference as a whole. That's important, for just the ACC game, if you're talking about just the ACC game in a vacuum. But it's also important with, when you're talking about the national scene, right? It gives, hypothetically, if you had, two really good teams, one of them loses against each other. Let's say Florida State loses to Clemson early in the season. They rematch in the ACC championship game. Florida State beats Clemson. In that kind of scenario, if they take care of business in the rest of their schedule, you may have an opportunity to have, multiple playoff teams. Now, again, would that ever happen for the ACC because of the opinion of the ACC? Maybe not, but you don't have a chance if you don't put your two best teams in your championship game. I don't think it's good for the ACC, or if it was ever good for the ACC, to have, a 12-0 Clemson or a 12-0 whoever on the Atlantic side, and then, a 6-6 Coastal team or a 7-5 Coastal team going against them. There's nothing for the conference to gain from that. So I think no divisions helps both the ACC and how they perceive nationally.
Yeah, you said it. You named it. You said all that needs to be said. I'm happy. Yeah, I'm happy finally. Two best teams.
I think every conference needs to get rid of divisions.
No more coastal chaos and none of that. So
no more trying to figure out that mess. No more of that. What's Clemson's 2 toughest games in the ACC?
Florida State and Notre Dame.
Yep. Yeah.
South Carolina is probably right up there. But I think it's got to be Florida State and Florida State obviously is the perceived challenger in the ACC, and Notre Dame, you get them, especially with where it falls on the schedule. You off of a road trip, no bye. Those are going to be your toughest games. I think those are
both home games. Good for Clemson. Both home games.
Now, I said this earlier, Todd. I said the 2 most important games are Florida State and South Carolina. So I think I think you need to win the South Carolina game more than you need to win the Notre Dame game. That's me personally. So I think, but those are your 2. I think those are your 2 toughest. But South Carolina is definitely up there.
When will college football force Notre Dame to pick a conference? They won't.
Yeah.
They won't. Notre Dame's not going into a conference. They have no reason to. They've made it to a 4-team playoff, and it's about to change to a 12-team playoff. So they have no incentive. Unless they're forced by money and TV contracts, that'll be the only thing that forces Notre Dame into a conference. It won't be postseason opportunities that forces Notre Dame into a conference. It'll be the money gets so astronomical that they either don't want to or can't say no to joining. But outside of that, I don't ever see Notre Dame joining a conference. You got let's get into the rest of our show really quick before we get too deep into the comments section. Let's talk about you got any recruiting updates?
We're already over the 2-hour mark.
Oh man! All right, let's hit a quick recruiting update. What'd you say?
Okay, I'm lagging a little bit. Let me. All right, okay. I think we're good. Let's talk a little recruiting.
Quick recruiting update. I'll keep it for short, people.
Obviously, Clemson had its big elite junior day over the last weekend. Really good returns out of it. You get 2 commitments out of it in safety Noah Dixon and defensive lineman Champ Thompson. I think these are 2 really nice takes. I think Clemson is probably going to take two safeties in this. I think they want to take 2 safeties in this class, but I think and Noah Dixon is one of them. But I think if KJ Bolden and Mike Matthews do want to join the class, I think you take both of them. So if you oversign there, because I think they're both really talented. But you got some really good returns out of that weekend. I think Clemson kind of put their best foot forward for a lot of big time prospects that were on. So it'll be really interesting to see how that plays out over the coming weeks. I think I think you're going to get another commitment tomorrow. So it's a big time weekend. What else?
Big dividends.
I mean, in regards to the commitments themselves, safety Noah Dixon, they're both from Georgia. Noah Dixon, he's kind of a kid that Clemson was on for a really long time. It was kind of a win rather than if for him as far as his recruitment was concerned. He kept it close to the vest, but he had always been leaning Clemson for a really long time. Really nice to get his commitment. I think he's a really nice player. And then Champ Thompson, defensive lineman. I think he's probably going to play tackle. I think he has the frame to play along the line, but I think Clemson really likes him at tackle, and I think if he's going to be a really nice player, especially when he kind of bulks up a little bit at the next level. So, two really nice takes for Clemson on the ball. This is going to be another. I think this is going to be a really nice defensive class for Clemson again this season. Or this cycle. So I think he made some good impressions. KJ Bolden, who has been mentioned in the chat, I think he did a really good. I think Clemson did a really good job of impressing him. I mean, you're battling Georgia and Ohio State. Those are kind of the perceived leaders for him right now. But I think Clemson has put their best foot forward. And I think he releases a top 5 or top 10 coming soon. So if you make that final cut, I think that's big. Mike Matthews, he wasn't able to attend junior day, but due to a conflict. But I don't think Clemson is out of that. I think getting him in I think they'll try to get him, closer to the spring and on campus. But I think that's recruitment Clemson is very much still in the thick of. It would be really nice if you could win both of those battles, but I know them between Bolden and Matthews. Linebacker Sammy Brown, you're kind of battling. It's kind of a Clemson-Georgia race right now. Best country. Been visiting. I think he's been camping at Clemson since he was like 11 or something like that. So Clemson has really known him and his family a really long time. He was the first offer that they put out in this class. So he's I think this is his 6th time visiting as a recruit. So Clemson is very much in the thick of it. They very much have a shot. It's going to be tough to fend off Georgia coming off 2 national championships, but I think that's a recruitment you still can win. Anyone else of note that I really want to mention? You get Braylon Staley, the in-state wide receiver. I think you did a really good job of evaluating and getting in on him early because he's received a lot of offers, this week. But I think Clemson has done a really good job of recruiting him, being the first, one of the first big schools to offer him. He's going to be a guy that's a really fast riser in this class. So excited to see where he ends up. But I really like where Clemson stands with him. And that's about as much as that's all that comes to mind. Quarterback target Walker White announces his commitment tomorrow. 4-star from Arkansas, #1 player in the state of Arkansas. He is set to announce tomorrow. I believe at 1. I don't remember the time. I'm not even going to say it, but Friday tomorrow. He's set to announce his commitment between Baylor, Auburn, and Clemson. I don't know, but coming off of a visit to Clemson and Elite Junior Day, decides to announce his commitment. There's some crystal balls in favor of the Tigers.
Clemson lean.
Clemson's in really good shape.
Clemson lean. Yeah. That'll be a good gift for us, man. That'll be good.
Yeah, really like his tape a lot. I still wish Clemson would have been able to get DJ Lagway, but I think this is a really, really nice take. I really like his tape a lot. I think he throws with a lot of accuracy, layers the ball really well. Really like his film. I think he's a nice fit for this Garrett Riley offense. I think he kind of reminds me a little bit of Max Duggan, a little bit. I think with a better, talented Max Duggan. He has the ability to run. He's a physical runner. In one of his highlights, he completely bowls over a linebacker and keeps going. So he's got that physicality. He's got size and mobility and a really good arm. So, and I think that's perfect for this Garrett Riley system. And he's already familiar with Garrett Riley because Riley offered him while he was at TCU. So it was it's a really nice fit, I think, and we'll see. Anything can happen. Auburn is trying to. Auburn obviously wants his services as well, but I really like where Clemson stands going into his commitment tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. Clemson's chugging along on the 2024 recruiting class. It's looking good so far. Getting some good lands. Hopefully, we get some good news tomorrow. We are we are chugging right along. Again, Garrett Riley already looks like he's earning his keep in that department. So looks like only good things to come for Clemson recruiting, as we have come to expect. But let's see. Yeah, Jamaris, this is that's the class of 2024 that Jordan was just talking about. Yep. WB2DX says, last I heard, Clemson was over the limit by 7 already this year. We are not over by 7, but we are over by
3.
We are over by 3 currently right now. Dabo said it in his press conference. We are still currently over by 3 heading into spring. So come fall, that's got to trim down to 85. He did mention that we got 3 former walk-ons on scholarship. So if push comes to shove, they will have to take those scholarships away from the former walk-ons, which he said he doesn't want to do. But again, we still got spring practice. We have the 2-week transfer period in May. We'll see if anybody leaves there. But again, if we do get transfers, I'll just throw it out there now. Clemson fans, don't expect any portal additions. Clemson's roster is full. So if anyone does transfer in the spring, unless it's just out of nowhere at some big position of need, he's probably just going to let those roster spots go and then let the 3 walk-ons keep their the scholarships. That's just traditionally Dabo saves, a couple scholarships for walk-on guys that he, believes have earned it. So I honestly don't think he wants to take those 3 guys' scholarships away. But if he has to, the name of the game is you got to get to 85. So by fall, Clemson will obviously be at 85 one way or another. But it'll be interesting to see how spring shakes out. And if we have any transfers or Dabo's got to make the tough decision to revoke or just take those scholarships from the former walk-ons. So that's kind of our scholarship situation. So no transfer portal for Clemson. We don't have any room. We don't have any scholarships. So, all right, guys. I think that'll do it for the show tonight. We are approaching almost 2.5 hours at this point. Me and Jordan have been going. So we're going to go ahead and wrap the show up, guys. If you have any last-second comments or questions, I'll give you another minute to get those in. But we're going to go ahead and try to wrap this thing up, guys. Somebody's saying they expect Lagway to decommit from Florida.
It could happen, but I don't know. It depends because the way Florida's quarterback situation is shaping out right now, I think there's a chance Lagway comes in 2024 and is probably going to be needed to play right away. So as far as playing time is concerned, I think he could be in good shape there. It depends. But we'll see. But yeah, it's a shame Clemson wasn't able to land him. Really like it. I thought he was the number 1 that Clemson needed to get at the quarterback position. But hey, it is what it is. They were also looking at Jaden Davis from Providence today. I think both sides have kind of cooled on each other a little bit. And really, frankly, I like Walker. I actually really like Walker White's tape a lot better than Jaden Davis's anyway. But we'll see. I think you're in good shape with as far as that is concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys. I think that's going to do it for the show tonight. Thank you guys, as always, for joining us for another edition of the All In Show. This has been our 5th episode. We are getting our feet under us in this off season. Again, I'm always thankful for all of you guys to show up. We got 24 people in here right now. We always got roughly the same crowd in here commenting every single week, and I truly, truly, truly do appreciate it, guys. Always look forward to you guys' comments and where you're going to take the conversation. It's much appreciated. We could not do this show without you. It wouldn't be a show if nobody's watching, right? So thank you guys for showing up and showing out like you always do. And again, we are here every single Thursday at 7 p.m. unless we put something else out. But that is our time slot, 7 p.m. every Thursday. Come chop it up, talk college football, talk Clemson football with me and your boy Jordan Bowman over here. Jordan Bowman, send the people off.
Yep, guys. Once again, thank you guys for tuning in. Be sure to check us out in the next episode next Thursday for 7 p.m. same time as always. And also, I've been chopping it up with Mark, and he kind of threw out an idea about a live Clemson Ohio State fan debate. So that might be something that comes. I don't know if it'll be on this channel. It might be on the main channel, but that could be something that comes around the corner. So if you're interested in that, you see me go at it with some Buckeye fans. That would be really, really fun. So make sure you check that out. As always, I don't know the time yet, but that's something we're workshopping right now. But stay tuned for that. But yeah, once again, thank you guys. We'll see you guys next episode.
Absolutely. Stay tuned, guys. Look forward to seeing you next Thursday at 7 p.m. But until then, I am Tiger Paul Craven. He is Jordan Bowman. And we'll see you next week.